This was an awesome year for video games, but this was very specifically a very special week for video games because we got The Last Guardian. I finished it on Monday. It took me about 12 hours. It's one of those experiences that I will never forget. And I think a lot of critics won't either. Max, you're probably going to start it, this weekend maybe?
Yeah.
And I think it's a very interesting game to look back on because I had a lot of problems with it. But when I think about it as a whole, I really like a lot of what was there, and I'm really glad I got to play it. Critics were kind of all over the place on this one because if you think about it, it's the kind of game where to give a perfect score, you're understanding that it's doing some stuff that no game's ever done before. But you're also sort of saying, like, I'm okay with some of the flaws that it has. And to give it a very negative score is to sort of discredit and disservice all the amazing stuff it's doing to focus only on the technical flaws and the issues. So, weird game of the review. Marty Sleever reviewed it for us. He gave it a 7 out of 10. Not the only review out there, obviously, and I suggest you read all of them, or at least as many as you can. But since you can't and you're busy and you probably want a good spectrum of what went down with this game recently, after 7 to 10 plus years of development time, Max and I thought we'd flip through some of the sort of more notable review quotes.
Like we do.
Like we do, and read them to you. So let's start with Telegraph.
They think it's perfect.
Yeah, perfect score from these guys. They say, what a pleasure it is to find a video game with such warmth and fascination with companionship, and what a joy it is for it to be found in a game with such elegant sense of exploration. Some of its technical quirks cannot be ignored, errant frame rates and inept camera work especially, and some may find Trico's capriciousness anathema to seamless adventure. But that is also what makes him and The Last Guardian so remarkable, things that any animal lover can't relate to. It is beautiful, heartfelt, unique, and infuriating, and I adore it. Wow. I've seen that like as a running theme about this game, and Max, you have a dog, right? You've trained it. I used to have a dog. Like I think like people are saying that the cumbersomeness that this game has and the inability to sort of get Trico to communicate with you is kind of like when you're standing in your backyard and you're like, come inside, and the dog just stares at you.
Well, I mean, it's like that feeling of like, oh, we got it when the dog does the thing you want him to.
Yeah.
But does that translate to a good? I mean, is it dog or feature, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, that's a really good quote.
So yeah, I think it's a little bit, they could have maybe streamlined that a little bit. This seems like the kind of game that even in spite of like technical errors, like maybe they could have just like made it a little bit easier, just less resistance. But I mean, again, I haven't even got my hands on it. But,
sure. No, I totally agree with that. Having completed it, yeah, I'm right there with you.
So then again, I love that Time Magazine is reviewing these games because they've been taking such a long time to come out.
You know who else reviewed it? This game is Guardian.
Oh, that's just so stupid. Time said, it feels momentous, a design breakthrough I wasn't expecting, and an experience that seems more likely to stand the test of time than others we like to point to. It calls out some of what's crass about this industry while showing us another way forward, the shape of things to come.
So I thought there was some interesting meta commentary in that review right there, because it's basically saying how many times we play a game and we're like, it's timeless. Right? Or, you know, this is gonna stand the test of time. But when I look at 3D games from like the last 10 or 12 years, I would say Shadow of the Colossus holds up really well for the most part. I would say stuff like Wind Waker like visually holds up really well. But if you look at like, you know, Modern Warfare or something, great game, had to get a remaster. A lot of games have to get remastered. I think this is one of those games that you'll be able to look to in a very long time and still be like, there's something special here.
Yeah, art direction goes a long way.
Yeah.
Level Up said, they give it a 9 out of 10. A brave vision that communicates a unique message, almost anachronic. In a sea of contemporary explosions, noise, and violence, The Last Guardian is a pause that contributes to video games with something despite some design annoyances. That's another thing is like, this is a game that's for all ages.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, people...
Well...
Okay, I mean, it's most ages. You know, it's like...
They beat that dog up real good in that game.
But yeah, but it's not like, you know, it's not politicized and it's not sexualized. It's just kind of like, here's a fairy tale, and sometimes fairy tales are violent, but it's like...
That's what I mean, it's got this sort of feel like where you're like, I don't know what year, like when Star Wars starts and you're like, I don't know what year this is, and it doesn't matter. This is just a story happening out of a storybook, like a fable. You know?
US Gamer says, playing The Last Guardian reminds me a lot of playing Half-Life games. The actual moment-to-moment of working my way through the game involves an enormous amount of frustration and annoyance, but when I look back at it, all I see are the happy memories of the experience. I think that is such a wonderful example of like what defines a good game.
Yeah.
You know, there's games that are fantastic when you're playing them and then you finish them and you're like, what was I doing again? But
dude, that happens so often nowadays too, where you're playing something and you're like, this is the game of the year, and then 2 months later you're like, well, it's like Uncharted 4, right? It's one of those games, it's like, it's gorgeous, it's really fun, the moment-to-moment stuff you're doing is just like incredible looking.
Yeah.
And then that kind of just got out of my system 2 months later, and I'm not really thinking about it anymore.
Comparatively, think of Uncharted 2. There's a bunch of parts in that just stick out, and there's
Yeah.
really no way, like, it can be the most perfectly crafted puzzle, the most beautiful graphics or whatever, but to have something that just stands out specifically and just...
And that's the thing about like your relationship with Trico in this game is that you're yelling at him and you're hoping he gets to do something, and it's getting him to move anywhere, and then he does it. And you only remember that part, so that's really important.
Polygon gave it a 7.5. In its best moments, The Last Guardian pulls off feats that could only be done on modern hardware. At its weakest, it's not just like a PlayStation 2 game, but like a particularly rough, unpolished PlayStation 2 game, one that recalls the legacy of its forebears, but can't quite recreate it.
So pro tip for people who haven't started this game out yet, you can actually hold down one of the shoulder buttons and that'll focus the camera on Trico. It never tells you that. It does tell you that you can climb on things and jump on things up until literally the last moment in the game, but it doesn't tell you that. And that was one of my main problems with this game, was the camera. Through amazing cinematic moments where set pieces are exploding and falling down, Trico goes through this incredible leap, and the camera tucks around underneath the boy's leg, and I'm like, I don't need to see that.
Yeah, don't look at that, Tungus.
Yeah.
IGN again, 7 out of 10. Marty Sleva, the divide between highs and lows of The Last Guardian is staggering. For every wonderful moment of absolute beauty and emotional attachment to its lifelike companion, there's an equal and opposite baffling moment that ruins the mood with frustrating controls and camera angles.
Yep. Yeah, he goes on to say that he pretty much put up with all of it because it's worth seeing.
Yeah,
You know?
and then finally, Gaming Trend gave it a 6 out of 10. The Last Guardian story is moving and beautifully told, but the poor execution of its dated mechanics hold it back from the greatness of its predecessors. I've been going into this hearing a lot of the kind of technical negativity, but again, it sounds like it's really kind of playing is believing type of thing.
Yep.
And you're usually like, you are really good at cutting through the kind of the fluff and the BS that comes from, praise.
Thank you.
But for you to be like, hey, this is worth it in spite of the flaws
Yes.
is
Yeah.
high. That's high kind of realistic praise. So
And I'll tell you this, Max, and I'll tell the audience this right to the camera. Play this game.
Yeah.
Somehow, rent it, borrow it, steal it, whatever you got to do. Play this game. Don't steal it. It's hard to do that. It's worth getting through the bad stuff to see what the good stuff is here. There's really nothing else like it.